Hello once again, Mangamatt here with the November manga update. This, of course, is everything I've read and got from the previous month. So let's start here. Milestone for this one, Volume 80 of One Piece. Yes, it has reached the 80 volume mark. It's been an extremely long ride for One Piece, and it stands to reason it'll be even longer before it's over. Oda was quoted, I believe, in one interview saying that his estimation is that One Piece is currently about 65% done. So it's fair to say that One Piece definitely has the potential to maybe go into the triple digits, 100 volumes. I can't even fathom that. Now, I know that, of course, there are lots of manga series in Japan that have reached and surpassed the 100 volume mark, but of course, here in America, such a thing has never happened. It's maybe possible that One Piece is maybe the longest running, most page-wise, content-wise, maybe the longest run comic available in English in America. It may be the longest one. I believe as far as in America, I believe that David Sims' Cerebus may be the longest run independently owned and operated comic in America, aside from maybe the Hernandez brothers with Love and Rockets might be up there. Maybe Stan Sakai with Usagi Yojimbo. I think they're all really close up there about that same. But I think it was Dave Sim that held the title the longest for longest run creator-owned property like that. Next up here we get Tsubasa World Chronicle Niraikanai, which completes this one, final volume. Of course, I'm not sure if this is the final volume of Tsubasa World Chronicle, and maybe it will begin again with another one, or if this is the end of Tsubasa, or it's just the ending for now, because it always seems like Clamp will start something and then whatever reason they stop it. It happened with Holic Ray. It happened with Gate 7. They always I keep hearing that they want to return to X at some point and continue and finish that storyline. Who knows when they'll get around to that? They're working on a continuation of Cardcaptor Sakura now. It's like they just want to hop around with all their different ideas. And in one sense, it is a group of 4 women, and certain members of the group contribute differently to different projects. So it may just be that whichever of the 4 is doing the Tsubasa stuff, she's like, I got a new idea for this one, and the rest just go along with it, and then someone else is like, well, I got another idea for this series, and they go along with that. And I don't know, I don't really know kind of what goes into their decision makings as far as what series they go for or don't go for, or vice versa. It's whatever. Overall, this last volume was actually pretty good, I think, with a conclusion to Shaoran and the gang going to this mystical place, Niraikanai, and how it has this sort of problem with the spirits there can't ascend to a next life. They can't be reincarnated or reborn because they're stuck in this weird kind of limbo, and Shaoran, because of his certain circumstances that have happened to him, he's the best person, sort of a chosen one to unlock and reestablish the connection to these various planes of existence and also a pretty interesting connection at the end with Kimihiro from Holic. So overall, I thought it was a nice extra little story for Tsubasa fans, I believe. Let's see. Next up, we got No Matter How I Look at It, It's You Guys' Fault I'm Not Popular, Volume 9, which again, very good. Is a continuation a lot from Volume 8, where the focus is on Tomoko being on a school trip with a bunch of her classmates, and sort of her like dealing with being in sort of this close quarters situation with a lot of different people that she feels she kind of has to interact with somehow, and you know, the quirkiness of that. Overall, again, I still enjoy the series. I think it hits the perfect tone with its humor, in how a lot of the laughs come at how very awkward Tomoko is around other people, and I like the fact that they're at least expanding the number of characters that she interacts with on a regular basis to sort of set up more jokes and running gags between them. The only downside I can think about with this series continuing for a long while is that Tomoko eventually would have to evolve as a character, I think, and you know, part of that would then have to be like her getting over her shyness, and then at that point, where do you go with it? One thing I would say is at some point Tomoko actually getting a boyfriend. That would be hilarious. Although I think probably if they ever got to that point, that would probably be the requiem for the series, because it's like Tomoko getting a boyfriend. That would be kind of the highest point in her esteem right there. Like, where do you go from that? And right now, I think she's still in her sophomore year. So if they're going in a continuation throughout her years in high school, you know, I guess the series ends when she graduates high school or something. But even still, I think it's really good for what that is. Next up, we got this is another you know, somber note here. We have the last volume of Sunny, Volume 6. Of course, you know, lots of people are fans of Taya Matsumoto. The only downside being that I think he just doesn't get enough attention, and I think something like Sunny is a little too offbeat for people to really get into, because it requires multiple readings to understand it and to actually get what's going on a lot of the time, because there's no point where characters are really talking about their feelings. There's no points where where you have a really firm understanding of what a lot of characters are thinking at the moment, or there's no really kind of progression of plot for a lot of these. It's just, there's these kids, they live in this kind of orphanage. It's not really an orphanage because their parents are still around. What it is parents, for whatever reason, maybe the parents just aren't responsible enough, or they just don't have the money to afford raising a child or anything, but for other reasons they're not abandoning them necessarily. They put the kids in this sort of home to sort of have them be taken care of. I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, I guess, where they are, but essentially they live in a home that is not their parents, and sometimes their parents come and visit, I guess. And some of the kids stay, some of the kids leave, and this last volume here focuses on a few of the kids that are still there. Some of the kids, even by the end of the volume, are still there at that home, and and I guess part of it is just like, because these are kids, you could say that the kids themselves aren't going to have these deep, thought-provoking inner monologues or something. Like the kid, like real kids wouldn't know what they're going through emotionally, especially with something like, your parents can't take care of you. Your parents aren't responsible, or there's something with your parents, like they're an alcoholic and they just can't be with you. Like something really serious like that. A child maybe in the elementary school may not be able to process what that is or what's going on, and if they can't process it, you can't really expect to understand what it is they're trying to communicate. And I think a lot of that is brought out in Sunny. It's a lot like I suppose Yotsuba, in that it's a manga about kids, but it's not a manga for kids, because I don't think, at least with Yotsuba, I could see how a younger kid could enjoy some of Yotsuba, but again, it's printed in a magazine that's geared towards older adults. I think the dialogue is a little too good, and sort of the way it's written, it's not written to be easily accessible to children. And Sunny is the same way. There's nothing about Sunny that at any point would make me think that kids would like this. No, this is sort of, it's like kind of a indie film, I guess. If you're really into indie films and stuff, it's a lot of that style. And I think that style is also why a lot of people kind of don't really like Taiyo Matsumoto. I guess it works in something more like Tekkon Kincrete or Go-Go Monster, where there's a lot more surrealism, so it makes it, you kind of get it more, but there's no surrealism in Sunny. There's not really. It's just kids, and they're kind of going through life, and it's a lot of times it's this very hard stuff that they're dealing with, and the kids, they're not having these long sort of emotional catharsis or anything. A lot of times the kids, they're just like, they say like, oh, your dad has to go, hey, he can't be here right now, he's gonna leave now, and the kids are like, when's he gonna be back? And I don't know, the parents, the adults are probably like, I don't know, and the kids kind of like, okay, because like that's really kind of how kids would do. Like, kids couldn't process something like that a lot of times, and they kind of go on like that. In any case, I like it. 6 volumes, gorgeous hardcovers. I really dig it a lot, and definitely I'm gonna have to reread the whole thing when I get around to maybe doing a more in-depth discussion about it later. See, next up we get Goodnight Pun Pun, Volume 3, which this actually kind of, this focuses again on Poon Poon, and then also on Poon Poon's mom, because at one point his mom gets cancer and has to go to the hospital, and then there's also a part where Poon Poon kind of goes through sort of a time jump, and he becomes much older. He's going into, I believe, college or high school, because I always get those two confused whenever someone in manga is talking about their entrance exams, because I immediately think college, because in America you don't need to have an entrance exam to go into high school, you just go. But again, and also it's hard to tell with Poon Poon, because he's drawn like a stick bird, so I can't really tell how old he is just from the looks. Needless to say, again, Goodnight Pun Pun may be probably the most, it's definitely the most emotion grasping series I've read. Nothing out there is as harsh, depressing, sometimes fun, but it always feels very real to me with Poon Poon. And of course, the obvious irony of that is the fact that the main character and his family are all drawn in this very crude, stick figure, little bird type people kind of way, where everyone else is of course drawn normal. And obviously that's intentional to make the main character more easily relatable, because the lack of facial features makes it easier for you, the reader, to impose yourself as the character. Again, I can't wait for more Pun Pun to come out. Let's see, next up, how about, Bleach Volume 68, which, oh boy, Bleach 68, was okay. What is it, 4 more volumes to go for Bleach? You know, there's some fighting, and oh yeah, there was also, you know, this big talk about Aizen being brought out as sort of like this last ditch effort to fight the Quincy's, because Aizen himself was like the biggest baddie that they ever fought before these guys, and even with Aizen just having his one eye and his ankles unrestrained, he can still cause so much damage. It's really cool, but you know, knowing now how long the series has to go before its end, it's like you know, I'm expecting so much to come, but knowing how much is left, it can't possibly deliver on everything, and that in itself is kind of sad to think about. It just I don't know, the whole thing in general. But you know, I've come this far, I gotta see how it ends. So I'm still sticking with it. Anyway, next up here, this is again a very odd choice for me. I found this, and it was it's I guess kind of one of those obscure manga. I'm always a big fan of obscure mangas when I can find them. If anybody out there has any, you know, if anybody can like point me in the right direction, maybe to anything that's an obscure manga to pick up that maybe has slipped under the radar or something, just anything like that doesn't get brought up or mentioned, or that I don't own or anything like that. You know, I'm always up for something like that, especially if it's like from some weird obscure publishing company or something, or you know, anything like that. Even like some bilingual editions. I know some of those came out, and sometimes those are fun to check out. But this one is Professor Munakata's British Museum Adventure. Now, the interesting story behind this particular one is that you know, the author Hoshino Yukinobu, who has done previous works, 2001 Nights, which was and Saber Tiger, which were both sci-fi stories that Viz put out. He of course, you know, in Japan has a sort of long-running sort of detective character, Professor Munakata, who he's been, I guess he wrote stories for him for like a good decade, and so at one point, I guess Yukinobu, he was like traveling to I guess London for something to look up, and in his travels he went to the British Museum of Art, and in going to the British Museum of Art, Munakata lasted from 1994 to 2010. This was published in 2009. While he was there, I guess there was a new exhibit at the museum specifically focused on Japanese art and Japanese paintings and stuff, and I guess they thought that it'd be a cool idea if Hoshino Yukinobu were to do a story in some way involving the British Museum of Art. They actually contacted him about it, and that's what led to this manga to come out. So the story goes that Professor Munakata is brought to the British Museum because I think he was like just, I don't know, visiting or something. You know how it is. All these like detectives are always just on vacation or something. And they stumble into a mystery, and it turns out this one sort of terrorist group has somehow managed to lift and successfully steal Stonehenge, the iconic British landmark, and that they are then also threatening to steal and or destroy more pieces of art if the British Museum refuses to return some of their artwork, to some of their displays to the respective countries for which they originally belonged. Because there's this whole and it's brought up here, and it's a well-known kind of issue. There's this whole thing where the British Empire has a long history of conquering other nations, and with conquering comes spoils, and a lot of times they would go in, take something, and then from that country they conquered, and then it would wind up in British hands, and then from British hands it would wind up in the British Museum. Such items of note include there's one piece of crown jewelry that is with the British I believe with the British family jewels, and that was actually originally a part of the Indian a part of India. They took that from India when they conquered India, and of course India requests that they return it, because it was theirs, they stole it. But Britain is kind of like, we don't want it. Same thing with a lot of stuff in the British Museum of Art. A lot of Egyptian things that are on display. Even the Rosetta Stone, which is maybe one of the most important findings in all of archaeology, and also is a important plot point in this volume, Rosetta Stone. Which was, first conquered by the French, and then I believe at some point Britain, conquered France, and then took the Rosetta Stone from them, and they have, and of course they're not going to return it to either France nor the country that they took it from, and so all of this deals into this mystery of Munakata trying to figure out who is behind all of these, how they're committing it, and how to stop them. And honestly, I mean, this would be very easy to adapt into at least a made-for-TV movie. You'd have to, cut corners with budget. You'd have to use like some cheap CG, here and there. But I think you could do it. The most expensive part would be, paying the British Museum to like film on location, probably, but that's just me. If you're a big fan of a lot of those detective thrillers, like your Inspector Poirot, your Case Closed, your Sherlock, you'd enjoy this. I definitely picked this up. It's got a lot of great detail and also amazing artwork by itself. Then next up here we get Genshiken 2nd Season, Volume 9, which I happen to know this only has 2 more volumes to go before it wraps up. And again, this was a very interesting volume here, especially because we get a lot of detail and character study from 2 of the girls. I can't remember their names. One I know is Hachi, which is, again, the guy that dresses like a girl. And the other is, Hato. Her name is Hato. And the other is I think Yajima. Yeah, I think it's, Yajima, which is the more heavyset girl featured here. Which Yajima kind of came off as sort of the frumpy, kind of I don't want to have fun sort of character, and like she takes a lot of stuff too seriously sometimes, and won't kind of cut loose like a lot of the other girls will. And in this one, there was actually a very interesting kind of development between the two of them, in that Hato had always been shown to be really good at drawing, and that Yajima had always been like terrible at drawing, and so the two of them kind of competed to see who would submit a better manga for the group to check out. And surprisingly enough, Yajima, who draws worse, came out on top, because her gag comedy was better written and done than Hato. And Yajima even came back and said, like, I read your story, it was good, but it wasn't done. You had more to do in here. You condensed way too much. You could have made this a longer story. And I thought that was a very interesting kind of interaction between the two of them, that like they kind of reached a respect and understanding. Again, it's very good. I like the interaction with the girls, and I can't wait to see kind of how it all wraps up in the end with them. Moving on, we have Princess Jellyfish, Volume 3. I love Princess Jellyfish. I don't care how that sounds coming out of my mouth. I love Princess Jellyfish. You know, when I can be at work and I can say to myself, I've got 5 minutes, let me read some Princess Jellyfish, and then immediately go back to work a couple hours, and then be like, oh, I got 5 minutes again to stop and do something? I'm going to read more Princess Jellyfish. When I am that hooked on something that I will devote any tiny bit of spare time to read more, that's when I know something's got me hooked. And that's how Princess Jellyfish is to me. Just everything about it. The characters, how over the top and zany they are, sort of the drama of it with Inari, what was it? No, not Inari. Inari's the main villain. She's the woman who's trying to steal the household from them. But Tsukimi, Tsukimi the girl herself, and how she's such an introvert, but she wants to do more, and especially just you see the passion flow out of her whenever she gets to do anything jellyfish related. The main thing here being that the guy Kuranosuke, who enjoys cross-dressing, his whole thing is that he's figured out that he can use Tsukimi's art style and imagination to design dresses in the style of jellyfish, which it speaks so much about how people can do the things that they like in the way that they like to do them. That a lot of times it's not necessarily finding the thing that you want to do, but figuring out how to infuse the thing that you want to do into something you can do. Tsukimi, it'd be so easy to I guess say like Tsukimi just winds up becoming some kind of marine biologist that loves jellyfish and obsesses with them. But it's much more interesting that Tsukimi can use her love of jellyfish to design gorgeous dresses for women to wear. Because, you think of jellyfish and how they're designed, and it's like, it could function as a dress, like a very long draping dress, or maybe a dress that has a lot of weird frills in it or something. And immediately, like, it's so brilliant, it's amazing, it doesn't exist in real life kind of way. There's a lot of creative type people are obsessed over one thing, and then they somehow that one thing they're obsessed with leads them to something completely unrelated, but in some way their obsession works into it. Like, I mean, for instance, Akira Toriyama, creator of Dragon Ball, he loves building models and model kits, and that's why all of his machines and all the cars and stuff in his stuff are so fine detailed. You know, it's just stuff like that. It works in really well. And just all the other girls, how they're obsessed with all their own little things. Like the one tall woman is obsessed with Romance of the Three Kingdoms. She references everything as Romance of the Three Kingdoms all the time, which I would say, like, unless you've played Dynasty Warriors or you've actually read the story of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, it just really sounds kind of like gibberish. But it's so entertaining how passionate she is about it. And then even still, some of the comedy, like they go to meet this one woman who's really good at sewing designer dresses, and would be able to help them sew these dresses for this one to sort of create kind of a stencil for this play, because they need to make 20 dresses, so they need stencils to make, you know, a sort of assembly line of dresses, you know, instead of trying to make each dress hand stitched and hand done one at a time. You know, they could do a stencil trace and then they could just cut the fabric and everything. They could just do it like that. And I love how they get there and it turns out she designs dresses for dolls. So of course everything that they use, they have to scale it up several times to get it to the size of a normal person. And then even more hilarious is when they decide to use the dresses on runways, they decide, instead of actually sewing the dresses themselves to wear on and wear off, which would take too long to do, they instead take a page from dolls and from, you know, the doing of how you do doll dresses, and of course, because dolls, you know, they're put on display, they don't actually have to move or anything. A lot of times when doll dresses are made, they're not actually sewn together to like slip on the doll. They're actually taped or glued onto the doll itself to otherwise, you know, never be removed or something. And the idea that they do that on their runway model is hilarious. Again, everything about this, I love it so much. Really, really great series. I highly recommend it to anyone. Let's see, next up we get Toriko, Volume 36, which again is also ending. I found out like a few weeks before I read this that like it's ending at like Volume 41 or 42 or something. So there's only about like, you know, less than 10 volumes left of this series. But again, this volume was pretty interesting. You know, following the capturing of Pear, the second of the God's Gourmet course, they instead feel that they need to ramp things up because there's this huge eclipse that's coming, and it spells doom for everyone in Toriko's world. And so, in order to get the rest of the ingredients faster, they've all decided to split up into teams to all go and get, you know, the other pieces of the full course meal. And I thought it was pretty entertaining, and especially the world that they go to now, which is sort of a world of the afterlife, because one of the gourmet meals is something called like, I think, Bridge or something, where it exists on both, you know, the living and the dead, and the plane of the dead, and that was also pretty neat. Then next up here, Haikyuu Volume 5, which, you know, sees, I guess, the kids all going to the next round of, or actually entering into, officially, the volleyball tournament. That, you know, the inter-high volleyball tournament qualifiers. And their first opponent is Date Tech, or Date Tech, which boasts this, a group of these very tall men who can block just about any shot over the net, and them having to actually use their strategies to sort of actually get around these sort of, you know, blockers, and also that they're a lot faster. they don't try to anticipate it. They actually try to move at the same speed as the ball is being passed, and it's actually a pretty interesting strategy, of course, if you can pull it off. Again, Haikyuu, you know, really love it as a sports manga series. Let's see, next up we get, where we got? Neo Parasite. This is a very odd kind of beast unto itself. This is a anthology collection, much the same way as like Attack on Titan anthology, but of course this is from Japan, of a bunch of shoujo manga artists who all decided to contribute something, a little story vignette or something, you know, taking place or having something to do with the manga series Parasite. Parasite, of course, is a story of a kid who gets this alien parasite creature that takes over his one arm, and it can grow into like this sort of a fleshy kind of tendril or blades or something. And he finds out that there are other parasites around that have taken over people's heads, and you know, he has to use him and his parasite buddy that's taken over his right hand to you know, fight and otherwise save humanity. It's very, very much a horror type manga series, which again makes it a very interesting choice that there were so many shoujo manga artists who were able to contribute for this, including Kaori Mori, who is a manga artist for A Bride Story. Her story, yeah, I think it was Kaori Yuki? No, I swear I had Kaori Mori in here. Or maybe it was Yuki. But hers is featured, I believe, right. Hers is actually the most disturbing of them. But you know, of course, what do you expect from you know, person behind Angel Sanctuary and stuff? Yeah, here's hers right here with you know, kind of her signature line work, especially on the hair and facial features and stuff. As far as some of the other ones, it's hard to really pin down. A lot of them never really had much of anything here translated, but nonetheless, it's very odd to see kind of how many women artists, you know, gush and talk about, you know, how much they love Parasite. And I gotta believe that part of that is because of the relationship between Shinji and Miji, the parasite on his arm. I swear, you know, more than anything, if it wasn't for that relationship in that series and how very interesting and fun it is, I'd say that Parasite kind of would have just been this dime a dozen anime manga series, and nobody would even really remember or care about it. Because on the surface, you could say that it's a ripoff of John Carpenter's The Thing with the paranoia and suspicion and invasion of the body snatchers. It's almost a rehash of a plot unto itself, you know, with little to offer except shock and gore value. But the relationship between those two characters is so fun and so engaging that you can't not love the series for that. I mean, you could do a whole, I mean, honestly, if Hitoshi Iwaki wanted to do more Parasite stuff, you could just do a whole volume of just Shinichi and Miji just sitting there talking or just doing everyday normal stuff, and you know, it'd be amazing to think of and to check out. And I think that's why, you know, a lot of people, including women, really love Parasite, is because of that sort of human emotion connection kind of thing that sort of gives it an emotion to it. It's not just, you know, a bunch of action gore fest. There's actually something, you know, kind of deeper. There's kind of this weird sort of bromance with him and Miji. And also Miji, a lot of the artists at least mentioned that Miji is, in a very bizarre, weird way, kind of cute. He's kind of cute in that he'll sometimes just have this one little eyeball, and he'll just have this one little mouth on the hand, and he'll just kind of talk, and and sort of be like, hey, what's up? You okay? You want to talk? Like he's just kind of like, you know, he's there for you. He's literally a shoulder to cry on because he's literally a part of his shoulder. I know that was a bad joke. All right, moving on. Let's see. Next we have another Hitoshi Iwaaki. No, Hoshino Yukinobu. Another Yukinobu Hoshino manga. This is The Two Faces of Tomorrow, which was actually an adaptation of the James P. Hogan novel of the same name. This was also excellent. Just honestly, I could say, like, if you pick up anything by this guy, by Hoshino, you know, you're gonna get some amazing sci-fi stuff. The story of this is that, you know, in the far, far future, they've developed this sort of AI that's called, I think, Titan. And Titan is sort of this calculating computer that can sort of design and figure out how to do things faster and better. And at one point they were using him on a moon base or something somewhere, and the machine decided that, you know, while instead of like sort of flying, you know, the mineral deposits from one location to another, it calculated in its electronic brain that it would be faster to just shoot the minerals out at the designated location far away, and just get it there like that. Which, of course, this leads to the obvious problem of it blows up that whole base on the other end there. And this leads the scientists to believe that if Titan ever got smarter or more complex, that in its thought processes, that it might actually become self-aware, and then at that point decide, why do I need to take orders from humans? And since Titan is basically linked up to everything like the internet, it would spell doom for all of mankind. So the idea is then to find this sort of like smallish space station that they can use as kind of as a test facility, and create two different simulations of Titan, which are then referred to as, I believe, Hector and something else. And the two of them are then sort of experimented on. The one being the Hector is brought up to try and be taught morality, and in that way, if morality is taught, then it would be able to you know, have sort of a rationale of how to conduct itself. Like, they run it through all these computer simulations, like you know, it's like a person in a simulated house, and they program it to clean up the house after a vase falls, but then, you know, they have to teach it everything. They have to program it with everything. Like, at first it tries to pick up the glass with its bare hands, but then, you know, of course, that would cut its hands. So they have to teach it that you can't pick it up with your hands. It'll cut you. You have to use a broom to sweep it up. And then at one point later, they then introduce a robot, an AI dog into the house, and they, you know, explain that you have to take care of the dog and make sure the dog doesn't get hurt. And in that sort of way, they're kind of teaching it very simple, basic, rudimentary morality in a sort of way. Whereas on the flip side, they are trying to sort of fail test another clone of the Titan program on Earth to see how far they can push it before it finally starts being aggressive. At first they give it, you know, simple tasks around the base to sort of like keep things you know, running or functioning, and then slowly they'll sort of mess with it. They'll you know, disable some of the drones. They'll you know, shut down certain sections of it and see it try to reboot itself. And eventually that version sort of rewires itself to run on an independent power source to where they can't shut it down anymore. And then it escalates with them trying to actually destroy and kill it, and because they're afraid, well, if this thing gets to the point where we can't shut it down or we can't stop it, it might try to hurt us. And then if this thing ever got back to Earth, you know, as the next logical place to go, then it'll infect the Titan on Earth and make it hostile. And so then this whole thing plays out in kind of like, you know, man versus machine, but the ending does have a very interesting outcome to it. And it's just a very well done sci-fi story. I'm surprised that there has never been an adaptation of this. It seems like something you would have seen in maybe the 80s or something. I don't know if it would be done today, because it seems like a lot of sci-fi movies today, they have to insert a lot of action and you know, space battles and stuff into it, and there's just not a lot of big sort of big action set pieces like that. But I think, like, you know, again, could do it on a lower budget, and this would be probably really amazing. But in any case, definitely pick up Two Faces of Tomorrow there. Yeah. All right, and next up we get let's see, Mr. Arashi's Amazing Freak Show. I previously got a hold of Mr. Arashi's Suehiro Maru's other manga work, which was Ultra Gash Inferno, which that's a really kind of extreme and exploitive kind of manga to get. I definitely don't recommend it for probably anyone, unless you have a really strong stomach for some stuff, and you can kind of appreciate in a way the free artistic, you know, I'm talking a way up. There's a lot of gross stuff in there that's gross for the sake of being gross, I'll say. Again, if you're not a fan of that kind of stuff, and you just don't want to see any of that, definitely don't pick it up. I would say, in an alternative sense, that Amazing Freak Show is a lot more easy to pick up and read for a lot of people. It focuses on this little girl who goes and joins a freak show attraction. You know, a group of performers who all have some sort of bizarre thing about them. You know, like a snake woman, you know, or a guy who has no arms and legs called the Human Worm. You know, a mummy man, a guy who has to wear bandages on him. You know, Kanabun, the boy girl, who is, of course, has man and woman parts. You know, a lot of other guys, and eventually this one guy who then who comes as a new member of the freak show attraction, Masaru, the bottled wonder, who Matsumitsu is, I'm sorry, his name is Matsumitsu. He essentially has this thing where he can go inside of a glass bottle, and that's his thing. He'll do that. And the other weird thing in here, though, is that at the end of a lot of these chapters, they will go into detail about like it almost sounds like first-hand knowledge of witnessing some freak shows or something, and for the life of me, I can't figure out where it comes from. Like this one right here, of course, where they're talking about Masamitsu, the bottled wonder right here, as he performs his feat right here. They go into these paragraphs upon paragraphs detailing, you know, what seems to be an actual account of witnessing somebody who did a routine like this, from something called A History of Shows by Itsuki Furukawa. I tried looking it up. I don't know at all who that is or what that particular book is. It just sounds crazy to think that at one point there was a man who could fit himself into a glass bottleneck, bottle jug like that. Obviously if somebody could do that in real life, it'd be pretty amazing. But in a sense, it's not nearly as disturbing or gory as Ultra Gash Inferno, but it does have some pretty disturbing moments in here, of course, with the freak shows, and at the end where Midori, the little girl, decides maybe it'd be better if she went away from living in this with all these freak show people. If I had to describe it, I'd say, like, if you watched Todd Browning's Freaks, produced in the 1930s, it's a lot like that, where the focus is again on the day-to-day or regular struggles of people that live in a freak show, and also sort of exploring their characters, and also kind of the oddity that is people who are like that. I say definitely pick it up if you want some cooler, weird, obscure manga like that. Let's see. Then next up we get Iron Wok John, volumes 14 through 18. Which again, I love Iron Wok John. Every volume, every chapter they'll give you like some little recipes on something to cook. And all the food stuff that they do is so crazy and ludicrous. By the end of from volume 14 to volume 18, they enter into a new competition, a new food competition, like next year's food competition. And the interesting thing about this one being that the main rival guy decided to actually fill out the judges with Nichido Otani, the main guy the main food critic guy who John has been a constant thorn in his side for. He actually decides to pad out the judges panel of this one with various people and individuals whom aren't even that qualified as food critics. He fills them out with, like, one guy's a nutritionist expert, another guy who's like a fashionista who's obsessed with like looks and appearances, another woman who's obsessed with aroma, and of course Otani himself. And I think there's one other. I think it's a panel of 4 judges, I think. And of course, this creates a whole new dynamic with how they have to present their foods, because it can't be, the aroma woman doesn't care about how it tastes. She only cares about how it smells. The aesthetics, the fashionista guy, he only cares about how the food looks. He doesn't care about how it smells. The nutritionist guy, again, doesn't care about how the food tastes or anything. He only cares about the nutritional value of the food. If it tastes good but has no nutritional value, he will give it a low score. It's very funny to see, kind of like, I could imagine like something like this be in like a reality show somewhere. Have people grading and critiquing stuff on completely arbitrary merits, and again, it makes it so entertaining to see, John and, his friends trying to navigate their way through these crazy competitions. John even sometimes purposefully sabotaging his own competition. At one point, he needs to like stir fry some rice to get it really hot and cooked, and he actually like smashes a gas pipe to block it so that all of the gas blows up through his burner and never goes through anybody else down the line, ruining all of their foods. And then after he cooks his and serves it, it sets off the fire sprinklers, which then ruins everyone else's dishes. So he winds up coming out on top in that competition because his own ego and his own crazy cooking methods sabotages everyone else, and he doesn't care. In fact, he's even like, I managed to make sure that I calculated how long it would take to finish the rice, to serve it, before the sprinklers come off. Now, Is it a coincidence then that it also ruins everybody else's dishes? I don't know. I was too busy making this awesome fried rice. He's so arrogant. He's so like about himself and about his Chinese cuisines. It's so radically different from a lot of these other shonen characters that are always like goody-goody and they have no kind of moral flaws to them. That seeing someone like him that's just so completely non-typical it's so entertaining for me. And that's why I love Wok John. Let's see, next up here we get Angel Sanctuary, volumes 11 through 14, which, again, still working my way through Angel Sanctuary. It is wonderful, though. I really do love it. It's sort of this, it's a lot like a Greek tragedy. You know, if I repeat myself in a lot of these updates, then, you know, I do. You know, I don't double check my updates to see if I describe something that I'm currently reading each time, you know, as the same thing. So, you know, just bear with me if that happens a lot. And in this series, you know, currently Setsuna has gotten his body back. He's going up to heaven to find his sister, who's currently awaiting trial to be executed on the sin of committing incest. And also at the same time, there's this whole kind of political angle where killing her through an execution will allow the current prime minister in heaven to then reassign where the spirit of the angel Jabril of water goes, and then through that can use that to then control more of heaven more effectively. And also it goes this kind of weird angle where when they go to heaven, there's a lot of this weird sci-fi stuff, like there's laser guns and hover ships and computers, as opposed to in hell where everything just looks like hell. I don't know how I really feel about kind of that weird kind of aesthetic change like that. You know, it's kind of, at one point I'm kind of like, you know, Kawariyuki. If you want to do a sci-fi, do a sci-fi. If you want to do a fantasy, do a fantasy. If you want to do something that's got a kind of religiously undertone kind of themes going on in it with the afterlife and stuff, do that. It doesn't necessarily work if you do all three at once. I'm just saying. Otherwise, though, the characters are really neat, and you know, I'm still sticking with it to see kind of where it goes from there in that series. And of course, as always, I try to leave something at the end to as kind of like an interesting little addition, you know, something very odd and unique for me. And that happens to be I bought some more online ebook mangas. These are ones that are only available online, of course. You know, I always try to prefer the print version when I can. The exception being One Punch Man, because there was a long period where One Punch Man was only available in English as a digital download, and it's only through the outrageous success of its airing on Toonami and Cartoon Network, and of course you know, the mainstream appeal of it in Japan and stuff, that it's actually gotten itself a you know, print version. It finally, you know, earned enough interest to get that. But some of these, of course, probably won't get a print version. You know, they're very niche in their appeals. These are the collections of Shotaro Ishinomori mangas. These include here, we have Inazuman, we have you know, I'm just gonna try and hold them up here as best I can with the quality on the phone not being necessarily the greatest. These are Inazuman volumes 1 through 4, and then Inazuman 1 through 4, and then also the other ones being Kamen Rider 1 through 3, and yeah, that's not even showing up. Jesus Christ. And then Kikaider volumes 1 through 5, and his one-shot manga Skullman, which was kind of his first inaugural manga that he worked on. I can't even show these. Needless to say, if you go on Comixology and look on their main site, you might not see it. The only way I heard about it was through some anime magazines a few years ago, and it just kind of stuck in the back of my brain and stayed there until I thought about it later. Like, you know what I never got? Those Shitaro Ishinomori digital comics. And then it was like, I might as well go get them, and I got them. And they're all like, I think $6 a piece, and they're about a full length manga, more or less, with Skullman being only 80 pages long. I would say that if you read all of them in a row, Skullman, Kamen Rider, Inazuman, then Kikaider, all straight through, marathoned them, they have very, very similar plots to them. Main hero is somehow created and or tied to an evil organization that wants to control the world, and through the powers and abilities that he was granted by the evil organization, he then chooses to oppose them and fight crime against them. That's pretty much the plot of most of Ishinomori stuff. Even Cyborg 009, that was the main plot of that. And of course it mostly started with Skullman, which I would say if you had to pick up anything, for history purposes, or to what's the word I'm looking for what's the word for posterity, I would say that get Skullman. It's only 80 pages. You breeze through it, and you see a lot of the early influences of his later works there. A seemingly very evil anti-hero type character. Weird, bizarre fight scenes with people that could like turn into different animals and stuff. Psychic fights and lasers and government conspiracies. And one hard-boiled detective who's trying to figure out what's going on with everything or something. A lot of those things come up in a lot of his other works. The most obvious inspiration being the later Kamen Rider, which basically took a lot of those same concepts, and especially the same kind of major look, and then made that more superhero-y. Now he was originally part of the evil organization that cybernetically enhanced him, and now he uses it to fight crime to hopefully stop and defeat said organization. And Kamen Rider is only 3 volumes long, and it moves at a breakneck pace. At one point, like, the main guy dies and they replace him, and it's just kind of like, okay, I'm following this guy now. And then Inazuman is so weird, so bizarre. It's about a guy who gains psychic powers, and the psychic powers manifest themselves in turning him into a blue guy with lightning bolts on him, and he gets kind of this weird moth motif to him, and then he can summon lightning, as psychics tend to do. And it's just, he goes in these weird psychic battles with all these different other weird psychic monsters and people and stuff. It's definitely the most bizarre of all of them, and I know that's saying a lot. And then the last one, Kikaider volumes 1 through 5. If you had to pick one, and I had to pick like the best one, it'd probably be Kikaider. Is there a coincidence that it happens to also be the longest of them? Probably, but it's also no surprise that aside from Kamen Rider, which I'm not technically counting, because the continuation of Kamen Rider is more the look and design, not necessarily the character themselves. That first Kamen Rider isn't constantly readapted. They use different characters with different stories and stuff, and do other stories. The theme being, you know, they're kind of in these bug-looking spandex suits, and they'll kill each other with the rider kick and stuff. You know, ride around a motorcycle, little stuff that's similar to the original, but not a retelling of the original. So as far as longevity's sake, I would say that Kikaider, there's no question that it's the one that gets the most attention from all of Ishinomori's stuff. It's the one that's gotten the most adaptations done for it. I think it's the most, probably the most endearing. Just the whole design of Kikaider being half red, half blue, this sort of semi-translucent metallic body, and also just the sheer tragedy of him as a character. He's a robot that was designed to feel and to you know, have a conscience, but it's flawed, it's broken, it's partially incomplete. His journey is wanting to become a human, but also at the same time to also fix the thing about him that's broken, that is kind of, that's, you know, very, you know, that's something that you get hooked into. And you know, that's why it's a lot of people who tend to not like a lot of old school manga and anime and stuff find themselves really loving Kikaider for that. And the ending, oh my god, the ending is so tragic. It's so sad. You know, actually a lot of Ishinomori stuff tend to end on a very sad note. Even Cyborg 009 had a sad kind of ending to it. Really, I think, and of course it's that way, I think, because, you know, happy endings are so easy to have in a story. You want everything to just be, you know, tied up in a neat little bow and everybody lives happily ever after. But it's, in some ways, it's not quite as satisfying or as earned as if the character faces some kind of loss. That there's some sort of sacrifice they have to go through, maybe even sacrificing themselves to achieve a goal. And you know that, you know, reading a lot of those Ishinomori stories kind of reminds you of how good a tragedy at the end of a long epic storyline can really be. How good it can really be at the end of all that. So anyway, that's my manga update, and you know. I'll check you guys later for the December one, and for more to come, hopefully. All right, check you later.